Hello there, I'm Cayce the Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. And on this episode, we're going to discuss Edgar Cayce, Giants and the Supernatural Creation Gods of Atlantis, Part 2. Now, if you are familiar, well, if you caught yesterday's live stream, which I hope you did, then you're aware that we are talking about uh, some of the discoveries and revelations that um, Edgar Cayce himself has uncovered through his tapping into the Akashic records, essentially. And what I find really interesting, and I want to kind of touch base a little bit on what we were talking about in yesterday's live stream in regards to Edgar Cayce and the gods is I what one thing I wanted to kind of touch on is the fact that in some of the things that we talked about in that issue in episode one, or in part one I should say, is the fact that we are living in a time where I feel that the knowledge and information that Edgar Cayce has uncovered and has shared is information that is more relevant now than ever. And what I mean by that is that for anybody out there, you really have to start reconsidering your viewpoint of what it means to be human and what it means to be alive in this day and age with the narrative that is being thrown, spun at us. And there are so many people in this world who are capable of tapping into areas of our life and our history that we aren't privy to. And what's interesting about Edgar Cayce and some of the information that was talked about is the fact that it's possible for anybody to be able to tap into this information, considering the fact that um, whatever Oppenheimer, read the Vedas and used the knowledge that was in the Vedas to tap into the ethereal realm of knowledge and history of the universe in order to aid in his ability to create the atom bomb. Albert Einstein has said things, regardless of how you view or feel about um, Albert Einstein. So, one thing that I find really interesting and that I just kind of wanted to talk about was, in part one, we learned that Edgar Cayce, he only had an eighth grade education, but this man was able to tap into the universe and be able to recall through visions moments in our true history, whether that is Atlantis and the beings that inhabit it, whether it was being able to predict people's illnesses. I mean, and I think what's kind of spooky and supernatural about a lot of this stuff is the fact that you almost can you can almost interpret it as if he is tapping into a supernatural energy in the sense of being able to view past history, and recall people who are, and beings that are already that are dead, that have been dead for, hundreds and thousands of years. But here he is, capable of being able to tap into those memories and see those people living in real time. And that ties into my past live stream where I was that I did on Hindu texts and quantum physics. And you can almost, in a sense, speculate and wonder as if Edgar Cayce is using some form of quantum ability in order to be able to tap into, our space time. And I know it sounds wild what I'm saying, but I would say just, humor me and, allow this conversation to challenge your foundational beliefs a little bit. But regardless of that, these types of individuals, this type of knowledge, it's out there. It's, anyone can actually really, if you are dedicated and willing enough, you can study these kind of things, and with the guise of, manifestation in the form of quantum entanglement, you might be able to find yourself a teacher or a guide to point you in the right direction. But what I'm saying is that, a lot of things that we may consider supernatural may not necessarily be supernatural at all. And maybe we are just briefly interacting with another plane of existence. And, Edgar Cayce and his abilities to tap into the Akashic records is just essentially tapping into, a, you could almost say like a pocket universe of the world where all infinite knowledge is being held and kept. And it's possible for anybody who has the ability and the willingness to tap into such powerful energy and mentality in order to view such records. And we covered in the previous episode, you can go to Edgar Cayce's foundation, which started in the 1930s. It's been around for a very, very long time. And you can learn a little bit more about him. You can read some of his transcripts and letters and learn a little bit more. But it's kind of funny to me that individuals like Edgar Cayce are not known to anybody. But then if you look into it and research him a little bit, you're like, you can be almost be blown away and kind of question, reality and human, possibilities. Are we being purposely restrained from our ability to truly tap into our potential? And I think individuals like Edgar Cayce are prime examples of our potentiality to tap into the full potential of what it means to be human and whatever types of powers we may have. We know that the CIA has done plenty of documented evidence and data and research on um, people who have psychic abilities, whether that's people who are telepathic and they can use precognition and they can, view an entire area on the other side of the planet. These are things that are well documented that the CIA and even the KGB were working on. So I'm not talking about things that are out of the realm of possibility or are unfathomable or unnatural. The things that I'm talking about are commonplace, are common knowledge. Many people out there are aware of these things. So I just think that, we should just really be mindful about that. And like I always say, and I know it's taboo, but do your own research. That's all I'm saying. Do your own research. But without further ado, let's get into it. There you are. Okay. This article was written September 28th, 2017 by Jim Vera. Edgar Cayce Six-Fingered Giants and the Supernatural Creation Gods of Atlantis. Part 2. In Plato's Symposium, 189 to 190 AD, uh, Aristophanes displays knowledge of an ancient myth of the androgyny, according to which our original nature was by no means the same as it is now. I will preface, I may butcher some names and phrases, so I apologize. And real quick, part one, it did discuss heavily about androgyny, and that the gods were, they were so powerful and so ethereal that there was no need for sex. And I know many of us out there would have to, we would probably prefer, we would trade sex over being gods, because ain't no way I'm gonna be a god and not have no need for coochie. That's crazy. That's unethical. It's unnecessary. But I'm also want to make sure that we don't get this idea of androgyny conflated with what's going on currently in Western society. Because I'm sure that many of people who are aware of what's going on in Western society, next thing you know, you're gonna have people of the alphabet community calling themselves gods because they're androgynous, and that is not the case. Um, just to preface, some words right now that are being used are being exploited and used incorrectly. And I'm not the word police or anything like that, but I just want people to kind of be self-aware as we continue moving forward in this conversation, that there are going to be people out there that are going to be using words incorrectly, and we might see some words uh, through these articles and moving forward, and be like, well, what's going on with that word? And let's be mindful that a lot of words and phrases are being co-opted and used to push many unethical and degenerate agendas, and what have you. So just keep in mind about that. When we're talking about these kind of things in relation to God, it's a little bit more nuanced than how some people would like to put it. When the androgyny was split into two halves, the distinct male and female sexes were created. Plato is known for his detailed description of Atlantis in the Timaeus and the Cratus, and the great flood that destroyed it, but is lesser known for his knowledge of ancient androgynous beings. Alfred North Whitehead famously said, Western philosophy is a series of footnotes to Plato. Do we accept this reality but ignore him when he talks of subjects that are strange to science? And what's funny about that, right? We're dealing with that right now. We could say the same thing. Do we accept this reality but ignore it when he talks of subjects that are of conspiracy to science? You could say the same thing. That are strange to science. It's what we're dealing with right now in our current climate and age, where the whole joke is, the conspiracy theorists keep on getting it right, day after day. Alex Jones was right. He was wrong about a very serious incident and probably some other things as well. But we're starting to notice more and more that the conspiracy theorists are right more than often. And Plato's defense, it's probably the same thing with him. It's probably, you could almost say in many ways that Plato and individuals like himself were the conspiracy theorists of their day. And for some of them, it cost them their life. So I find it very funny here that we have this quote right here, where do we accept this reality but ignore him when he talks of subjects that are strange to science? And how funny is that right now, they keep on shouting from the rooftops, trust the science, but we know from even from Plato's era that may not always necessarily be the case. And isn't it so funny when, we have, quotes from Abraham Lincoln talking about giants. We have, archaeological evidence, photographs about giants. We have plethora of anecdotal evidence, whether it's from explorers or even in biblical texts. Uh, it's, or whether we talk about the fact that there are pyramids in China. It's so funny to me how any of these things we talk about, or even with Brian Forster and his work in Bolivia or Peru, I forgot which place he lives, with the humanoid skulls, the humanoid elongated skulls, which check out my live stream where I talk about how the U.S. presidential bloodline is all, they're all related and descended from a humanoid bloodline. But even there, the Cornwall Museum in the UK, they have evidence since the early 18th century confirming the existence of a separate humanoid species. But if I were to go out there and make a public presentation about this to like the mainstream narrative and some science people, and show the difference between their heads and ours, and how we have a suture bone and they don't, and presenting the evidence from the early 1800s and referencing said museum and their own data, I'd be looked at as I'm crazy. you know they would ignore the reality that I'm presenting to them, even though the reality that I'm presenting is verifiable, and there's data and there's evidence to prove that this is the real reality. And I think that's what's really interesting about this conversation, and probably about, Plato and of his time, is that, he was challenging the reality that mankind and that his society was dealing with at that time, and presenting information that would challenge their perspective. In essence, challenging their foundational belief system. And as we now know right now in this current era that we're living in, if you challenge someone's foundational belief system, they will most likely ostracize you. They'll most likely disown you. They'll most likely report you. They'll most likely block you. I mean, take your pick. Uh, that's the irony of all of this, and the fact that even if someone like myself, who has been, I'm from the islands. I'm a Caribbean brother, but I had my own godmother call me a white supremacist because I brought up evidence and data and referenced a white person about it. And she was getting on my tail about, because I don't believe the mainstream narrative about the slave trade. And I just found it very humorous that she's telling me, how can you not believe that? And I'm like, well, in hindsight, I should have told her, well, I mean, you believe this, the mainstream narrative of the slave trade, which was told to you by white people. I'm listening to people who aren't white, who are either black or Caribbean or indigenous or Aborigine American, and explaining to me this is not the true history. So it's just funny to me how, whether it's science, whether it's history, whether it's culture, where if you start, presenting ideas and data and evidence that contradict the mainstream or contradict the science, you're looked at as a heretic. You're looked at as blasphemy. And I think that's what's so interesting about this conversation, and even about Edgar Cayce, and what, hear this, do we accept this reality but ignore him when he talks to subjects that are strange to science? And how often are we living in a world where we can bring up conversations, bring up things, and people will go ballistic. They'll go mad. They will insult you. Take your pick. But even now, what I think is so funny about it is the fact that I'll bring up an example. I was seeing a girl, right, and she got mad at me because I was explaining to her how there are pyramids in China. And she got all up in arms. She's like, "You're lying, da 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 this, da da da." And when I'm presenting her evidence, she doubled down on me lying. And this is the thing that I'm talking about, is like, even for him at his time, you can present evidence and all this fun jazz, and people will just double down because they don't want to listen to a narrative that contradicts their belief system, their domestication. And that's, and that's really all we're dealing with right now in and of itself, is people struggling to challenge and evolve their foundations and their belief system, and break free from the domestication, and so much domestication to the point where it's costing people their friendships, relationships, the ability to socialize, the ability to evolve and improve upon themselves. And how are we, as uh free thinking individuals who believe in freedom of thought, who believe in freedom of consent, for informed consent, all these kind of things, how are we supposed to navigate the world when we're the crazy ones, yet we're the most sane? It's kind of it's interesting how individuals like ourselves, we are the sane ones stuck in the asylum, and the asylum is turning into planet Earth, or the flat Earth, or the concave Earth, however you want to interpret this reality. And I think that's just fascinating and very telling to where we're heading, and hopefully we can make a recourse, but time will tell. And here we have a photo of Plato, Aristotle on School of Athens, by Raphael Fresco, 1509 to 1511. Philo of Alexandria, the first century AD. What? Philo of Alexandria took up Plato's dualistic conception of the creation as well. Add Brissos and Midras, the Gnostics, and a host of other sources, including previously mentioned ones, to the long list, who also have Jonas Richter, in his book The Sky God Daius, makes the remarkable claim that a common global religion which worshipped an androgynous deity existed in deep antiquity. He states, "It is hard to believe that people have already been devoted to a singular androgynous deity 20,000 years ago, but the Paleolithic sculptures are quite explicit. Many multi-headed sculptures have been found, and one of the oldest identifiable sculptures made of ivory of mammoth and found at Gargian, Ukraine, is claimed to be 22,000 years old." Now, if you caught my uh, live streams where I discuss the dynastic races, where we essentially discuss the post-deluge races that were started by the sons of Noah, and we looked specifically into Joseph, the son of Noah, who is essentially credited with creating Europe, and the Yamani culture. And the Yamani culture essentially is Europeans, white people. And this started all the way in Ukraine. So if you're wondering a little bit why Ukraine is so important to the elites and what have you, it's the birthplace of the Yamani, aka the white man. So Ukraine is a very interesting place. Turkey is a very interesting place, especially Turkey, with a lot of its ancient megalithic structures and history. Whether it's the Noah's Ark. I mean, there's a lot of Globepi Tepe, which is an incredible astrological calendar, which was built 12,000 years ago. And it was built around the same time that the Denisovans, which were pro Homo sapiens, were still active on this planet. So if you want to go around and think that there weren't like a multitude of different human and humanoid species running around on the earth, 20 to 40,000 years ago, so even 100,000 years prior to that, you're being foolish and naive, and no disrespect to you. But another thing that I find very interesting here is this idea that about 20,000 years ago, they worshipped an androgynous deity. Now, and they said he was multi-headed, and which is similar to we talked about in part one about Kamun, who is the creation god in Egyptian religion. And he wasn't androgynous. He did have a wife. But I'm wondering if this creation god in Egyptian history and religion may have had some inspiration from this androgynous deity, that was deity from 20,000 years ago, because in some sculptures Kamun is represented as having four heads, most often with a ram, because the Egyptians associated rams with fertility, and Kamun was the god of life and people. He would create people. He would also flood the Nile. So I'm wondering if there's some kind of correlation between this, because 20,000 years ago, if Atlantis was still around, is it possible that the Atlanteans were worshiping a androgynous deity, and possibly that inspired the Egyptian religion, because we there are some reports and accounts that the Egyptians are descendants of the Atlanteans because of the Recock structure. If you aspire to that ideology, that Atlantis was the Recock structure. If you want more information about that, I highly recommend you check out um, Bright Insight by Jimmy. His channel is an incredible channel. He has incredible videos. I might make comments and you might hear me make references, and some of that stuff is that I've learned from watching his videos. So I highly recommend you check out his stuff if you have some free time. But this whole thing here with Ukraine, and how it's just a very important place. So I really recommend you check out my dynastic videos, and to learn more about them. But this is what's where we're in, and I don't think the Anunnaki were androgynous beings, because there was Enki and Enlil, the brothers. So I don't know if there was at one point. I don't know, because I'm about to start talking out my ass, and I ain't gonna do that right now. But I just think this is very interesting, and especially when you look at Gnostic teachings, they're very open and willing to discuss these ideas, and even challenge the Bible, and I would say like the mainstream Bible, because there are many other canonical books that are purposely withheld from the mainstream canon, because they talk in very Gnostic manners and contradict the narrative that has in Christian Catholicism that the Vatican has created. Uh, so that's another kind of thing to kind of take into consideration. But let's continue. Here we have what looks like a 2,000-year-old double-headed androgynous sculpture from Gargarion, Ukraine. Interesting. Oh, okay, I see the two heads here. Some of the vast amount of androgynous deities found in cultures around the world are Adam Kadon, Jewish; Agditis, Farragon, Near Eastern; Agni, Hindu; Agamungi, Australian Aborigine; Adharia, or Harishavra, Hindu; Armiti, Iranian; Asagai, Gigage, Cherokee; Atain, Egyptian; uh, Awan, Wilano, Zuni, Da, Dahumi. What's Dahumi? I mean, give us a little more. Deva, Indonesian; Eros, Greek. Oh, Eros. Okay. Uh, Fro Ing, Igwaz, Norse; uh, Galatura, Kuragara, Samaria, Gran, Silbo Gueto, Vudun, uh, Gwydion, Celtic, Inari, Shintoism, In Penang, Guatemalan, Guare, New Zealand, Maori, Lanzai, Gwai, Dawis, uh, La Rajan, Australian Aborigine, Mahatala, Jata, Borneo, Mali, May, Havau, Polynesian, Wari, Zimbabwe, Rhodesian, Net, Netchan, Chilean, Naus, Gnosticism, Viracocha, Inca. Woo. Here we have a picture of Plato's original androgynous human, connected. You have the man and the female one. This is very similar to that other. Who did that? Was that Einstein or what's that guy's name? Da Vinci did that drawing. I think it was Da Vinci. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I think y'all know what I'm talking about. Are we supposed to accept this is all a vast coincidence? That all these unconnected cultures, sometimes on remotely isolated islands, conjure up the same traditions of ancient androgynous deities, the way they did with traditions of a lost continent, a great flood, giants, little people, and six fingers and toes? And that's something that I'm saying that I am constantly also talking about. It's like none of this is a coincidence. There's a reason why you have Noah, but in Hindu texts, his name is Manu. It's the same story of the great flood. So this idea that all of um, these communities and tribes came up with the same ideas just randomly is foolish to think. And to me, that tells me that either and even in the Hindu texts, they talk about how there was an individual who traveled around the world, and was it Enlil? I cannot. I get the brothers mixed up, but it was one of the brothers traveled around the world, essentially being the version of Noah. It's a story that's told everywhere, and some of them predate each other, but they're all the same story. They all talk about a great flood. Where are they all getting this knowledge from? Where are they all getting these memories from? And why is it that you look at drawings or hieroglyphics and they show giants, or they show beings that are incredibly small, or they show spacecrafts? In my mind, and I think most people out there, if you use your critical thinking skills, they don't have time, or they don't have the imaginary capabilities to draw some of the things they're thinking of. Even now, our own science fiction novels and writers, they all got inspired from the reality around them, what they saw, what they interacted with. And it would be foolish to think that they didn't draw what they saw and interacted with. That's the whole point. That's what made cave drawing so fascinating. The ones, whether they're in Egypt or the ones in the Sahara, I mean, in France. So it's just, it's not a coincidence. And they want us to think that it's all a coincidence and it's all by chance and by luck and all this other nonsense, which I don't agree with. And that's just their way of just dumbing us down and making us seem like idiots, which is not the case. So I really think that we should all kind of really take that into consideration about any of this stuff. Any of the ancient teachings and knowledge that you learn or you're privy to. Because it's so, and that's why I talk about the mainstream narrative of history and the true lost narrative of history. And every single day we're told about we're provided new information about the mainstream narrative of history, but then at the exact same time new lost history is unearthed that completely contradicts and proves how dishonest the mainstream narrative of history is. So, that's one thing that for me is like, you got to break free from the narrative. You got to break free from the mind, the hive mind. And, that hive mind of thinking, oh, all slaves came from Africa, and there were no such things as giants, and all these things. It's like, okay, well, look at the actual evidence. Go to the sites where they found giants. I mean, there were giants that were found in West Virginia. There was a mound, burial mound, that had two giants, both of them over 9 feet tall. I did a video on it. You can go and watch it, and you can read along with the article. And then if you really don't believe it, go to the site, research the archaeologists, the professors that found it, learn about the law that the Smithsonian had, a rule where any information regarding giants was supposed to be suppressed and destroyed and hidden away. You can look at it yourself. It's there. So, that's why, none of this stuff is a coincidence. And like I said earlier, how many of you guys knew about the pyramids in China? How many of you even knew that Indonesia has a pyramid? Or that one of the earliest pyramids that predates the Egyptian pyramid is in Greece? But they won't tell you that. And if you present to someone who believes there are only pyramids in Egypt, and they don't consider the pyramids in Mexico pyramids, then go and ask them, well, what about the one in Greece that's 600 years older than the one in Egypt, or the Egyptian pyramid, or the pyramids in China, which are supposedly even bigger than the ones in Egypt? I did a video on it. Is that one still up? I don't think that video is still up. The fact what I'm talking about is that you can look at it. There's evidence. Go on to Google and type in Chinese pyramids, and you can see the pictures for yourself. Go into Google, type in pyramids in Indonesia, and you will see it. Go in and type in pyramids off the coast of Cuba, and you will see what pyramids no different than the ones in Egypt off the coast of Cuba. But why aren't we talking about that? Why is that not in the history books? Is that like a coincidence? Like, or what about the pyramids in North America? They don't want to talk about those. They call them mounds, but we're supposed to say, "Oh, it's just a coincidence. Oh, they're not real." It's just like, I'm just saying, like, it's just so foolish to act like. And what's so asinine about it is that they're so hell bent on making humans and people just seem like they're so stupid they can't judge for themselves. Why can't you just present us the true information and let us make the decision on how we want to interpret it? But no, they want to condition and domesticate how we think and how we feel and how we interpret information. And I'm not for that. What's passed on in the man bags? Oh, yes, the man bags. Another compelling aspect of this mystery is that many of these androgynous creator gods are depicted worldwide carrying strange man bags. Graham Hancock, author of Fingerprints of the Gods, has enlightened us on a possible transfer of technology from survivors of an ancient cataclysm, and highlighted that these bringers of the arts and sciences of civilization are often carrying man bags. Theories around Theories abound tempting to explain what they are, but what is known is that they are found over a vast geographic area associated with androgynous supernatural flood survivors from a drowned continent. So, who were these beings and where did they come from? And here we have a picture of an androgynous Babylonian man-fish deity, Ones, carrying the mysterious man bag. And I believe one of the brothers, he also lived underwater and would appear as, and this may be him. Um, yeah, it's Babylonian, so the name is different. I wish I could remember which one he was. Let's look at some of these godlike deities who showed up after the Great Flood. Onas was an androgynous Babylonian man-fish deity who carries the man bag. In fact, In the Babylonian expedition of the University of Pennsylvania, Series A cuneiform text, H.V. Hilfert makes a eye-opening claim. This androgynous nature, this ability to beget out of one of himself, his own ego, this self-existence of inert in each and every god of the Sumerians. All Sumerian gods are androgynous. Here we have a picture of an androgynous demigod, Quetzalcoatl. Yes, Quetzalcoatl, offspring of the androgynous Omatele, carries a man bag at the Olmec site of La Venta, 800 BC. Now, Quetzalcoatl, he's the good guy uh, of the two brothers, and he was the one who wanted to keep humanity going. He wanted humanity to survive, while his brother wanted to get rid of humanity and start over. Across the ocean in Mexico, Quetzalcoatl, the demigod offspring of the androgynous being Omtelte, is depicted at the Olmec site of La Vienta carrying a man bag. The legendary Viracocha, another androgynous god, is renowned for his post-flood activities in South America. Often depicted as a bearded giant, he arrived from a lost continent in the Atlantic and spread advanced and unprecedented wisdom. Oddly, he is called the foam of the sea, just as the legendary Colcolion was in Ireland. Colcolion was, man, I think I might have gotten Quetzalcoatl mixed up. Uh, Erase everything I said earlier. I think I may have gotten it wrong. Guys, it's so much information, guys. It's so overwhelming. Where unprecedented was okay. Only he's called the foam of the sea, just as the legendary Colcolion was in Ireland. Colcolion was claimed to have 7 fingers and toes. You don't have to venture further in Wikipedia to uncover that fact. I love that little diss on Wikipedia. And derived from a lost advanced civilization in the middle of the Atlantic, where both these supernatural beings called foam of the sea because they had advanced metal sea craft that created a turning of the waves and inspired awe in the indigenous peoples. In the wake of these beings, sprang up wonderfully complex civilizations and stonework. In South America, Sumeria, and after androgynous thought came to Egypt, some of the world's most incredible sophisticated civilizations soon appeared. The androgynous thought is widely reported to have been from Atlantis in esoteric circles. He is also known as Hermes Trismegistus. Hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite is Hermes plus Aphrodite. Interesting. Now, oh God, what was it that he said? Okay, here. So the whole, I don't know if they're talking about Lemuria because there were two cities, Lemuria and Atlantis, and I'm not sure if they're talking about the islands. I think it was, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but the way I've interpreted is that Lemuria was an island, very advanced island civilization, and then there was also Atlantis, which I believe, if you were to go with the idea that Atlantis was the recog structure in sub-Saharan Africa, then you can kind of understand where they're both in the Atlantic. So just something to think about and to keep in mind. But at the same time, I could be completely wrong. But that's the fun of all this, just interpreting it. So here we have a picture of a double-headed Herm statue in Athens. As an added piece of evidence regarding the sophistication of ancient Sumer, let us turn to the remarkable recent discovery. As reported in the Guardian August 24th in 2017, an ancient Babylonian tablet has finally been deciphered after 100 years by a team from New South Wales in Sydney. From the article, quote, mathematics have been arguing for most of a century about the interpretation of the tablet known as Plimpton 322. ever since the New York publisher George Plimpton bequeathed it to Columbia University in the 1930s as part of a major collection. He brought it from Edgar Banks, a diplomat, antiquities dealer, and flamboyant amateur archaeologist said to have inspired the character of Indiana Jones. His feats included climbing Mount Ararat in an unsuccessful attempt to find Noah's Ark, who had who had excavated it in southern Iraq in the early 20th century. Mansfield, who has published his research with his colleague Norman Wildberger, well, that's a kinky last name, in the Journal of Historia Mathematica, says that while mathematicians, wow, understood for decades that the tablet demonstrates that the theorem long predated Pythagoras, there had been no agreement about the intended use of the tablet. The huge mystery until now was its purpose, why the ancient scribes carried out the complex task of generating and sorting the numbers on the tablet. Our research reveals that Plimpton 322 describes the shapes of right angled triangles using a novel kind of trigonometry based on ratios, not angles and circles. It is a fascinating mathematical work that demonstrates undoubted genius. End quote. So there you have it. Some of the most advanced mathematical, you know, equations and data is being presented to us, and it's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands years old. Something to really take into consideration. And I think I said this in I don't know if it was yesterday's stream or my stream on Hindu texts and quantum physics, but like, I really do not think that we are advanced as past civilizations are. I really don't think so. I really think we are stagnant in our advance. I've been thinking about doing a live stream and comparing current humanity to the humanity in the space fantasy world Warhammer 40K. I think there's a lot of very similarities there, and I've been thinking about doing a presentation on that. But all I'm saying here is that we it would be foolish of us to act like they were not more advanced than we are. Just because we have cell phones and internet, it doesn't mean anything. So just something to think about. And here we have a picture of the Plimpton 322 Babylonian tablet. Quote, the tablet not only contains the world's oldest trigonomic table, it is also the only completely accurate trigonometric table. Because of the very different Babylonian approach to arithmetic and geometry, this means it has great relevance for our modern world. Babylonian mathematics may have been out of fashion for more than 3,000 years, but it has possible practical applications in surveying, computer graphics, and education. There is a rare example of the ancient world teaching us something new. Is it really something new, or is it something that we've already known? And here we have applications in surveying, computer graphics. So could we make a case to say that perhaps a lost advanced civilization at one point had computer graphics, and maybe they just didn't use the type of circuitry that we use? I don't know. I'm just saying. It kind of makes me think of the movie Atlantis, the Disney film. Great film. So check it out. And how they use these crystals to generate energy to create their flying ships and pretty much fuel their civilization. So it's just something to think about, and also the fact that they were doing trigonometry. And in my video talking about ancient Hindu texts, we talk about the fact that trigonometry was essentially created in was after, at what time it was lost, but then it was rediscovered in India. But they like to credit a German mathematician as the father of trigonometry and calculus when it was actually Indian. And that's a whole nother conversation. How most incredible advancements in our society were created by non-white people, but they like to credit White people as the ones who discovered it. When you do further detail, look into the information, and then you realize that the Indian people were already practicing trigonometry and calculus 500 years prior, or 500 or 100 years prior to the Europeans. But that's just neither here nor there. All this begs the question: did the androgynous man bag carrying Onnes pass along his sophisticated information in ancient times? It also adds fuel to the question of why Sumerians used a base 12 system rather than a base 10 system. Could this ancient conundrum be easily explained by the fact that these bringers of civilization had 6 fingers instead of 5, as has been previously suggested? Oh, that's interesting. Which brings us to another remarkably specific trait associated with the supernatural ancient ones: 6 fingers and toes. The biblical quote regarding the giant of Gath has been previously given in reference to An Ghazal statues, but there is much more to this story. I mean, that's really an interesting point to make. Is it possible that their math was not only more advanced and very sophisticated, is because of the fact that they had 6 fingers instead of 5? And you would have that, because if you have 6 fingers instead of 5, everything changes. The math changes, your interpretation of the world and angles, everything changes the moment if you have, an extra set of digits. So I think that's a really interesting point to take in consideration. And I really wonder if anyone currently, any, mathematicians out there currently have taken some of these old formulas of trigonometry and, like, applied it to human anatomy. I don't know. I'm just, I'm talking on my ass at this point, but it doesn't smell too bad. But what I'm talking about, and just referring to, is this idea that, has anyone used this form of math to examine, ancient megalithic structures and old technology that, whether the Egyptians have, Peru, wherever. I'm just curious. I just think it'd be an interesting idea, and to see if maybe some of the structures around the world, and I know people have done plenty of math and all that stuff, but have they tried using this formula of trigonometry in approaching these megalithic structures? I think that would be an interesting study. And maybe someone out there who is way, way, way more smarter than me, but not as good looking, can put that to test. Alrighty. And here we have a picture. It is a map B, planned land near Banrabe village, Tara. It is a carved giant 6-toed footprint, island of Tara, um, and it's called the place of the ghosts. Interesting. Now I'm guessing that they have found, yeah, footprints, and I think many people have seen those really bizarre, like, 6-toed footprints in stone and in fossilized mud and what have you, and been like, wait, what's going on here? So I think it's very interesting, um, and I believe in my my live stream where I talked about the presidential bloodline, I'm pretty sure I have one or two videos in there of a woman who clearly has 6 fingers, and her hand, I kid you not, her hand is massive. It's a massive hand, and it moves. The sixth finger moves normal. It's not like a weird mutation or anything like that. And her hand is massive, and I wish she had something near her to, like, compare it, but, like, you could just tell just from looking at the video. And, like, I have a big hand myself, but, like, I could tell this woman's fist would easily wrap around my fist. So there are some videos out there. Um, and I could tell it wasn't like CGI'd or anything like that. The video, everything about it, you can tell was very authentic. And I've seen, more than one video of that exact same hand, uh, showing just like, hey, here's my fingers. So it makes me wonder if they are among us. Possibly, I don't know. It's a little weird mystery because even in the Vatican, there I've seen photos, and I don't know if this person worked at the Vatican, but this person clearly had a elongated skull. They clearly looked humanoid, and there are rumors and accounts I've heard of elongated individuals who work and operate and live at the Vatican. I'm not saying it's 100% true. As you said, I'm saying rumors and hearsay and things of other researchers and their interviews and run ins with people who either have worked at the Vatican or live at the Vatican, what have you. So, it's really weird out there. Just letting you know, it's really weird out there. The world is littered with ancient statues, carvings, petroglyphs with six fingers and toes. From isolated Pacific islanders to numerous U.S. states to countries beyond mention worldwide. Even Edgar Cayce reports on a high being with six fingers named Muzun, who traveled to the Gobi Desert from the lost Pacific continent of Lemuria. What did I say? In 9026 BC. Now, I should say that I said Lemuria was an island, but it's probably better to say that it was a continent. I know some people call it an island, some call it a continent. I don't remember the size of it or anything like that. I know more about, I don't know more, but I'm more familiar with Atlantis than I am familiar with Lemuria. So here we have a picture in Utah. Shout out to Utah of a six-fingered and toed petroglyph. Interesting. See, we got some people in the live stream. Please, if you're enjoying the show so far, hit that like button and please leave a thumbs up if you're enjoying the show as well. Show me some love. Let's get this channel growing. Let's get us booming. Shout out to Rumble. Much love over there. I see you guys. I really appreciate it. Hit that like button and leave a thumbs up. And much love to YouTube. And shout out to Twitch as well. So let's get back into it. Cayce's depiction of Muzun reading 87710 describes him as being 6 foot tall, blue eyed, hair dark gold, hands six fingered. Immediately brings to mind the recently discovered uh, Caucasoid Tarim Basin mummies found in China, many of which have red and blonde hair, blue eyes, and are between 6 and 6 feet inches tall. And if you know anything about um, over in South America, a lot of the elongated skulls had red hair. And a lot of the accounts of the giants were depicted with having red hair. Here we have a six-fingered Adam by John Van Sucrell, 1540. So we have a picture of Adam and Eve, but here Adam clearly has six fingers. One, two, yeah. So what does that mean? That's a very interesting thing to, where did what Bible and where did Jean Van got this interpretation of Adam and Eve? So it's just something to really think about. How many depictions of Adam and Eve are out there from the 1540s, 1600s, 1800s, 17, 1300s that depict Adam with six fingers. That's a very interesting thing. And man, that really makes me wonder about Noah and Joseph. Man, that's really interesting. Alrighty, let's continue. Androgynous creator gods, strange beings with man bags, outrageous stonework, strikingly similar iconography, and the most stunning part is that all of the sources I have listed from Edgar Cayce to the Rosicrucians and Plato all report this same reality. Is this not worth investigating? I say, of course it is, and I'm not alone. Many other researchers have been on the trail of these mysteries for decades, and it now looks like these ideas are beginning to get a closer look. This alternative view of history makes sense of all the strange and mythological traditions of the world, where our current scientific paradigm addresses none of it and leaves us in the dark with the misrepresentation that our ancestors were superstitious, illogical, and insane. Besides the tragedies of the tragedies of the burning of the Library of Alexandria and the Mayan custodics being destroyed, it looks like modern science has thrown out thousands of years of legitimate evidence in the form of myth, legend, religious documents, and oral traditions and secret society literature. The more I dig, the more I lean toward the ancient world described by Edgar Cayce and others as being the more probable reality. I certainly don't believe that there are any truth to the idea of academic conspiracies, but but human nature and the doctrine effect of entrenched orientations around the draconian effect of entrenched orientations around pre-existing paradigms make it an uphill battle for new ideas to take root. Hopefully this information will strike the reader as profoundly as it has me, and you will be open to entertain seemingly heretical notions about the past. Now, that's literally what I was saying earlier. These kind of conversations, this knowledge, it's heretical, it's blasphemy. And why? Because it's probably the truth. And what was I saying? Here I don't really agree with what he's saying here. I certainly don't believe that there to be any truth to the idea of academic conspiracies. That is the most, I'm sorry, but that is the most stupid ass thing to say. Really? Are you not aware of I know this was written in 2017, so I should I should restrain myself a bit. But it's foolish to say that, knowing especially what we know what happened with one of the Weinstein boys and the whole his disc theory, and the fact that we literally have evidence of proving that the Smithsonian purposely lied and destroyed evidence regarding giants. I just told you about the Cornworth Museum in the UK, how they know about the humanoid species. So for him to say that he doesn't believe that there are any academic conspiracies, I'm like, you just wrote an entire two-part article talking about the conspiracies in academics that they don't want to talk about. So it's just this is don't get me wrong, both articles were great, but like he kind of ended it with sounding like just contradicting himself and sounding foolish. But the fact that he thinks that there are no academic conspiracies, I mean, come on now, what are we doing here? You're being foolish. And I also think he's purposely being naive and downplaying the idea of academic conspiracies. I could be wrong. I could not be. Oh, shout out to Canon Hotep. Oh, wow, much love. Thank you so much, sir. Sorry, I was right in the zone, and once I get into it, I will occasionally check out the chats. But I get so into everything, I completely spaced out on you. I really appreciate the comment. Thank you so much, Canon Hotep. Look forward to catching you on the after party tonight. Hotep and build, sir. Hotep and build. Uh, I just, it's just funny to me that he would really, really funny and foolish that he would say something like that. When we know that academic conspiracies have been the whole slave trade. I mean, what else do I need to? How many things do we need to just discuss and say that we know that there are a plethora of academic conspiracies, even more so now with PragerU and what they're trying to instill in the academics now in our history books. I mean, all I'm trying to say is that it is crazy to think that there are no academic conspiracies going on, and there haven't been. The Smithsonian is a branch of the federal government. If you don't trust the federal government, you are most likely not going to trust anything the Smithsonian has to say. And that's kind of my whole point. And just for him to be like there's no such thing as academic conspiracies, that's crazy. Whether or not you believe in Bob Lazar and you believe his story and and everything that he has presented, there is documented evidence that he worked at that school, that he worked at Los Alamos Air Base. It's documented. Whether or not he was a pimp and any of that fun jazz, I don't know. I'm not getting into all that. I don't know enough about that, but I know that there are speculations and suspicions that his story is not all that it seems. But I'm not here for all that. All I'm saying is that, specifically, I'm not here for that. All I'm saying is that it's foolish for us to think that academic conspiracies are not prolific. What was the whole pandemic? What? Are we going to act like the pandemic wasn't also a giant academic conspiracy? Because how many medicines and things like that were purposely suppressed and not utilized? Because as we all know, the vaccines are safe and effective, and they stop the transmission. Oh, the fact that I have to say that, oh gosh, it's so funny. But even there, with everything that was going on the last 3 years, we're gonna pretend that was not an academic conspiracy? Really? We're gonna pretend. We're gonna pretend that this cultural revolution that we're experiencing right now isn't an academic conspiracy, where you literally have OBGYN classes teaching women how to give birth through a man's penis urethra? Are we not going to consider that an academic conspiracy to conspire to the idea that men can give birth through their penises? I'm just saying. I'm just saying that to me sounds like a conspiracy and not one of the good ones. All right, one of the crazy, ridiculous ones that not even a reasonable person who researches conspiracies would even humor, because it sounds ridiculous. But that's a form of academic conspiracy, right? We're going to pretend that men can give birth specifically through their penises. I mean, listen, if a man can do that, bro, take that show on the road. You could make bank. Hell, start an OnlyFans. There'll be people out there that want to pay for that. But this idea that there are no such things as academic conspiracies is crazy. That's absolutely crazy to me. Why is it that anytime any scientist, mathematician, quantum physicist makes a major breakthrough, a breakthrough that would completely rewrite our history, rewrite mathematics, rewrite our need for energy, their work is either suppressed, their their blueprint is bought off, the technology is bought off, they get paid an unlimited payout. All you got to do is keep your mouth shut. They take their technology, their blueprints, put it in the vault, and wipe their hands of it. That's not academic conspiracies right there. Or the fact that literally there are pyramids in North America, but they don't want to acknowledge them. That's not an academic conspiracy. They don't want to acknowledge that there were already indigenous Aborigines, Americans who were already here, i.e., dark skinned people. They don't want to talk about that. That's not academic conspiracy, suppressing that knowledge or suppressing the fact that I've learned recently about black slave owners in America and not talking about that. That's not academic suppression. But the fact that the Moors were here, that's not academic suppression. Then what is? To me, even Edgar Cayce's work, There's a reason why he's suppressed, that nobody talks about him or anything, is because, well, he conflicts with the mainstream narrative. And that in and of itself, the mainstream narrative of our history in and of itself is an academic conspiracy. It is literally a conspiracy to lie, manipulate, obfuscate the truth of humanity, the truth of the multitudes of various forms of humanity that occupied and lived and traversed this earth. And that to me, we are living literally in the biggest academic conspiracy. Literally, whether it's the history of America, whether it's the history of Europe, any of it, it's all an academic conspiracy. Especially when they'll claim that it was a white man that discovered calculus and trigonometry, when it was already being used by the Babylonians, the Sumerians, and then it was rediscovered by the Hindus, and then eventually Western society picked it up. But they're not going to tell you that. Just like how I learned recently on the Griff Report by Hotep Jesus, that uh Hippocratic, he learned medicine from the temple of Amun-Hotep in Egypt. So if we're gonna credit anybody for the foundations for modern medicine, it was the Africans. And don't get mad at me. Don't shoot the messenger. It's on Wikipedia, and even in the article that we just read, which is to me kind of hilarious and ironic, where even he kind of poked fun and made a joke about how foolish Wikipedia is, and how you can literally go on Wikipedia and get some of the truth, which is ironic and kind of funny, because Wikipedia is essentially a bought out um intelligence apparatus. I mean, even the guy who created Wikipedia is like, bro, they I can't do anything. They've completely co-opted it, and they use it for their academic conspiracies. Because even on that, they've called Graham Hancock, who's married to an Indian woman, a white supremacist, because of his knowledge and his information, because he challenges the mainstream narrative of history with his Younger Dryas impact, which was confirmed and real, to his Netflix series Ancient Apocalypse, which is discussing a lot of the things that we just covered here, and even things that Edgar Cayce talked about. And even with the man bag, some people think it housed information, some people think it was a teleportation device. I mean, it could be one and the same. It's no different than wondering what the oh wow, Indiana Jones and the, oh god, which one was it? The Last Crusade? No, not that Last Crusade. The Lost, yeah, the Ark of the Covenant. There we go. There are rumors that the Ark of the Covenant could have been one of these devices. But the whole thing is that this idea that there are no such things as academic conspiracies, when we are literally living in an academic conspiracy in real time. We have been since 2019. I mean, forever. But if I'm talking about something that we're currently living in, we're living in a literally in a current academic conspiracy, because I can assure you that the mainstream narrative and the mainstream books that are going to be written about the pandemic and all of that are going to completely ignore the truth that we all know. I mean, how hilarious is it that even now CNN and all these other things are kind of admitting the truth? And that's why it was so funny where it said earlier in the article, are we going to ignore strange ideas that conflict with the science? And we are literally experiencing that every single day. And it doesn't even have to be medical science. It could be anthropology science. It could literally be archaeological science. It could even be cultural science. It would be crazy. That's why it was hilarious that when I was speaking with my godmother, and she's mocking me because I believe the information that's presented in biblical texts, because a lot of it has been verified and there's data and there's actual archaeological evidence. And she's telling me I'm crazy. But her being a Baha'i and her believing in the stories of the Bab and his followers, how what was it, 300 men or 200 men took on 1,000 to 20,000 warriors and killed them all. But she's more than willing to believe in that biblical story, but not in other biblical stories. That right there, in and of itself, is academic conspiracy. I mean, a religious conspiracy, I guess. But even, we can look at studying different religions as in an academic reality or an academic perspective, and it's pretty cut and dry there. So even with with that kind of notion, we have to think about this idea of, well, we're purposely being told one thing about the narrative, that this is it, it's set in stone, but then every now and then new information pops out. I mean, literally, Gobekli Tepe literally contradicts the entire mainstream narrative. Literally, looking at the pictures of the pyramids in China contradict the mainstream narrative. It's sometimes it's so irrefutable you can't even hide it. But they're literally going to pretend. They're literally just going to put a sign right around it. They're going to pull what they're doing in Maui right now, putting up all the black fencing so nobody sees the truth. That's what they're doing with all these academic sites and all this, the true knowledge. Nothing to see here. Don't believe your eyes. There's nothing true here, even though there's data and evidence to prove the case. So this idea that there are no such things as academic conspiracies is just ignorant. And I know that this article was written in 2017, but it boils my buns because we're literally living in that right now, and it's so bad that I have literally have had girls stop talking to me because they believe the academic conspiracy while I'm over here talking about the truth. This is wild, right? And I only bring that as an example because sometimes when you present information and data to people, and I didn't even say anything that crazy to her, all right, I was holding back. But the reality is that people do not want their foundations they don't want the belief system, their foundational belief system, to be challenged, because then that means they have to literally look at themselves and reevaluate who they are as an individual, if they even are, because many people right now are living with a hive mentality. So you have people like myself and many others, and Canon and many people of the Hotep Nation, who are individuals who live in the essential reality, who do not aspire or entertain the false reality, and somehow we're the crazy ones. And I was saying this earlier, we're the most sane people living in an insane asylum. Because we're the ones who are saying the truth, but we're the ones that are looked at as crazy. Why is it that I think many people, if you've read or seen the movie, One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you relate with the crazy brothers in there because they seem like the most real. And that's something that I just think is so crazy too. And that's what the whole academic conspiracy. There's literally one here, and we literally acknowledge it when it comes to trigonometry and the fact that it was rediscovered in India by an individual named Bravagata. But we're gonna say that it was this guy from Germany is the father of calculus. That's not true. That in and of itself is a academic conspiracy. All right. Some of the nonsense that Candace Owens was saying in her video is literally academic conspiracy. I mean, if you don't believe the fact that that Reverend the Jesse James and Reverend whatever Jackson or whatever his name betrayed MLK, then you'd be foolish to not think that in many ways, with Candace Owens promoting and cultivating academic conspiracies, that she's not against the truth. And I don't have anything against her. Some of the things that she has done is and the way she's gone to the top is very unethical. But I ain't gonna hate someone for what they do. I mean, you got to respect the grift, and that's what I've been learning recently. Even if my whole thing personally, if you want to grift, at least grift morally and ethically. But if you're gonna do it unethically and immorally, fine. But then live with the consequences. And I don't know, how history is going to remember Candace Owens. I don't know. But what I do know is that history only remembers what it condones, and everything else is forgotten or is heretical. And that in of itself is the academic conspiracy. The human experience that we are having right now as individuals is being suppressed by academic conspiracies. And how much of that has been prolific through various entities or deals, you can put on your tinfoil kufi and have fun with that. But what I'm trying to say here essentially is that even our capabilities as humans is a conspiracy, because we're not even allowed to tap into the full potentiality of our minds. Why is that? You're going to tell me that there isn't information and papers out there that have covered and realized this information? You're being foolish if you don't think that there's some information out there. Hence the reason why I'm saying that life in and of itself right now, what we are experiencing, what we're being told how to live, is an academic conspiracy. And we have to be very mindful and vigilant of that notion and that idea, because we are living in a time right now where conditioned love is prolific, and conditioned love is harmful, it's unhealthy, it's dangerous. And that conditioned love is also what you're seeing in the mainstream narrative. With conditioned love comes, you have to be complacent, you have to be submissive, and you can't be an individual. But with unconditioned love, there is individuality, there is being able to express yourself, there is being able to talk about the essential reality, the truth. And that is also the problem that we're also dealing with, is this fact that we're living in a humanity right now that's conditioned, that has conditioned love. There's very few people and there's very few groups out there that promote and embrace and advocate for unconditioned love. And why is that? Well, I would speculate that with unconditioned love comes a capability for us to be more than what we are currently. But that to me is, my speculation, what I feel, what I interpret. And I'm not saying anyone has to agree or believe me, but I do think that there's some merit of truth to that. Why are we being so suppressed in our knowledge and our capabilities? Well, you could say a lot of it is for control and for money, and that the military, pharmaceutical, industrial, corporate complex wants control of us. Yes, that's very true. But why is it that we see these individuals out there who break free from the manipulation, break free from the matrix, break free from the indoctrination? They're living wholly, truthfully, and experiencing life in its totality. And they're not falling victim to the academic conspiracies. They're out there. It took me a very long time to get into this mindset of where I am. As I like to put it, I used to drink the Kool-Aid. I would be lying to you and to myself if I didn't admit that I used to drink the Kool-Aid. But after having a brief moment in the hospital and kind of waking up in that moment, I realized I can't keep drinking this stuff. And I hope that for many people out there themselves, that they kind of take into consideration and think about what kind of knowledge are they drinking. Because if it's Kool-Aid, then you're not living right and you're not living true. And do not allow people to intimidate you with their false reality. We're living in a time right now where people are being intimidated by the false reality, and ending up giving into that false reality. And it's costing them their livelihood. It's costing them their health. It's costing them their mental wellness. It's costing them their ability to be, and the worst of all, it's costing them their humanity. So for everyone out there, I implore you to not give in to the hive mind, to not give in to these academic conspiracies, to not give in to the false reality and the intimidation that comes with it. Stay true to yourself. In the end, the only person who will ever have your back, who will ever support you, who will ever believe in you is you. There's no one else. Regardless of how wonderful the support system and family you have around you, the only person in the end who will truly believe you and have your back and always have your best interest is you. Not the mainstream narrative, not the true narrative, but you, the essential realist. That is what matters most, is that we maintain our individual thought. As I always say, a community of individuals with like-minded goals and morals and ethics can do incredible things. And I believe at one point there was a human civilization like that. And I don't think they want us to be like that again. Because in that civilization, in that world, we were all equal. We were all supportive. We were all experiencing our potentiality. We were experiencing the truth. And they want us to be confined into the academic conspiracy that is the false reality. And I say, screw all of that. Embrace the true self. Embrace the essential reality. Embrace the art of living. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far and if you enjoyed everything you've heard, please make sure to hit that like button and make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.